Yeah, I've got a bunch of them. So, yeah, that's the ones. I think that's the. I've got those too.
Okay, we'll now call order to order this session of the Common Council of the City of Huntingburg. Start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Your Father God, thank you again for all those that are here to serve today, all the citizens that are concerned enough about their community to be here to attend and have their voices heard. We ask that as we go into this meeting today, that our hearts may be with the citizens of Huntingburg and thinking that the decisions we made are for the betterment of this community. And not our own, our own selfish ideas, but that they do serve all. For these things, we ask you, your son's name. Amen. I guess somebody should. I know we have people cleaning, doing other things. First of all, we've all had a chance, hopefully to be minutes of our November meeting. Do I have a November 26th council? Motion to approve minutes.
Motion approved. I'll second.
We have a second. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Approval of claims. Do you have any questions on those? Or do we have?
Motion approved claims.
We have a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, we've got a first and second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. First thing asking for today is we did receive within the agenda there, you have the senior center bid. We had one bid for that. I will say that we did contact several and solicit several bids. I did get some people from local contractors apologize for their inability to be able to bid on the project. The bidder, the only qualified bid that we had was for Cipher Construction for $1,070,000 and well, there was some cents on the end of that.
Nope.
No, $1,070,000. So I don't know if you remember earlier in the year, ARPA funds were approved to go towards that, which is $472,000. We do have two alternate sources that was voted on a little bit ago. That was utilizing TIF from the northwest, northeast areas to make up the difference, which be bring us with contingencies up to over $1.12 million to construct the building. Estimates we got were in the 1.5 to 1.6 range to go with the new building. So this is still a savings over that. Remember, if we're not able to get under contract by the end of the year, the $472,000 ARPA funds cannot be retained by the city. It must be returned. So there's a lot of things we've had to go through to get to this point. It's at the end of the year, and I think we're going to make it. Some of that was also with the RDC approving the sources of TIP to make up the difference. I feel it's important that we continue this project forward. Part of that reason is because we promised the seniors for about 15 years now, we're going to have a senior center. None has ever come about. I was a little hesitant on the location that we're presently at. However, with the group that the amount of progress that we're seeing at the old hospital location now with the improvements they've made in the parking lot and the appearance, hopefully the possibility of existing senior housing in that area, senior duplexes down the road by a couple of developers, local developers that are looking at that. Have already purchased property and have plans to do so here in a few years. I think it's now a more viable location than it was. And seniors are excited about it. Rita Reller, our senior person, she is very excited about it too. Just to let you know, this does not include fixtures or anything else. We're looking at donations. We do have some interest in making donations for those. There's no reason in this county for you to go out and buy furniture for these type of things. That's available to us. We did reduce, some of this is kind of a bare bones. It's gonna include an office, kitchen. It's gonna include an area where they can gather and 2 restrooms. The basement will be used for storage. There'll be some grading on the outside to stop some of the flooding in the basement that's occurring right now. The building has no utilities. And presently was not constructed in a manner to be occupied. So a lot of the costs that are going into this will be reshoring, taking some of the 2x6s, flooring, the floor joists and changing those to 2x10. So reason for the high cost, that's what it is. But I guess what I would need is senior center bid approval, be able to sign the contract. Obviously, the contract would be approved by Phil Schneider, our attorney, as well as proper bonds would have to be posted prior to the signing. That's probably going to take about a week.
So we do have all the funding available in TIF.
With the 10%, there's nothing there even for about a 10% contingency on the project. We vetted it up. I don't think we need to have any large contingency.
So can private individuals still donate towards this if they want to?
Yeah, yeah, that would go towards, any donations would go to interior items too, such as would that be business equipment, that'd be refrigerators, those type of things.
Okay.
Because we probably have about $150,000 worth of furnishings, you know, between furniture and everything else. Somebody mentioned the electric part of it was some other things that they want to pay for.
So motion would be in order to approve the bid of Cipher Construction in the sum of $1,070,000 and authorize the mayor and clerk treasurer to execute a construction contract. Subject to approval, legal approval.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion, we have a second.
I'll second.
Pam vote to you, second. And now, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Seniors will be very thankful for that. Probably really right now, under the police department, we have changed ordinance. I know we talked about this at the last meeting in Board of Public Works. Bring it up here. Yeah, it's really to provide for the police department salary for a sergeant.
Actually, the first one.
First one, that's
for
what-
to create the position of sergeant. As you recall, they now have positions detective sergeant. But they want to create a position that's just supervisory, that has no detective functions with it. And so this ordinance would add that position. The detective sergeant would go vacant. This ordinance would add a new position called sergeant. Board of Public Works approved it and recommended for approval of council.
So what I understand, he would not be able to put a detective sergeant in unless we approve.
Yeah, well, it'd have to be in the budget.
Yeah.
So the police chief can fill these positions as he determines necessary, so long as they're salaries the budget.
Yeah, we were trying to fill the sergeant's position. However, that person was not a detective.
Right.
And as a result, we could not pay that person or put them in those pay ranges. So bringing down the fact that we have a detective and a sergeant are 2 different people, allows us to break that salary into.
Okay.
So
So 2024-23.
So the first one, that take an order here, we have to develop the position of police sergeant. That's chapter 30, amending chapter 37. I hear no accept. Introduce, I'm sorry.
I moved to introduce it.
Everyone, we have a second.
We'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Can we amend the rules?
You can suspend the rules and it's considered option on the same night it's introduced, provided that you have unanimous approval of the 2/3 that are here.
Make a motion to suspend the rules.
I'll second.
We have first and second to suspend the rules, all those, and accept the ordinance on the first night reverse reading. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. And now we have to have the motion to adopt.
Motion to adopt.
I'll second.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. That passes.
Yeah, Bounds. Aye.
Aye.
Bolte.
Aye.
Where? Barron. 4 ayes, 1 absent.
Okay. Now we have to consider the ordinance amending salary ordinance to provide for that salary. For the sergeant.
This falls into where the detective sergeant was.
Same range as what the detective sergeant had.
2020.
Make a motion to accept that.
Bruce,
Introduce, yes.
I'll second.
Okay, we have first, second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Now we need to,
suspend.
Make a motion to suspend the rules, adopt them same night.
motion to suspend the rules, adopt.
I'll make that motion.
All right, we have first and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
I'll second. Oh,
I think Glenn made it.
Yeah.
Make a motion, Tim, second, I guess.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Motion carries.
Motion to adopt.
Now we'll need another motion. There's one. Here.
Motion to adopt.
Thank you.
I'll second.
And second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Bounds. Aye. Kissel.
Aye.
Bolte.
Aye.
Where? Aye. Barron. 4 ayes, 1 absent.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. We have, City Attorney Phil Snyder's area here. We got, first of all, we have 2 people here for residential apartment development. And this is just consideration of a, for a tax abatement. You're not voting on the tax abatement tonight. You're just considering, you're proposing for that to be a part of a public hearing sometime in January, probably, that we can set the date. But want to give you time to be able to, Ruger's got some fancy foam boards. He's got all kinds of things here. Which that's Scott Steinkamp, who's here. It's one of its co-developers. To be able to answer any questions, realizing that what is happening tonight, you're not approving this. We're still waiting on engineering drawings to be able to determine discharge rates of water is probably a big one right now. And some other design elements that have to be followed the UDO. We've yet to receive anything there. Just be aware that engineers that put those things together are few and far between right now, and they're a little behind. We have some preliminary reports. I think that I feel good that it can be. My biggest concern without development in the beginning was the water discharge rates and ensuring that we can keep them at or below what our present discharge rates. So we're not putting more water in faster that's down there. And the developers and Paul Lake and myself have been in that conversation since I believe April or May of this year around that. And those plans are being developed. They cannot be approved, will not be approved without that information coming forward. So not a lot of things can be answered regarding that at this point because we don't have the final engineer drawings. All we have preliminary health maps and of those areas will be included to control the flow of water. But Ruger?
Yep.
Let me just preface everything by saying that developers have petitioned the city or filed an application with the city to obtain residential tax abatement for 5 years. for residential development. In order for there to be a possibility of residential tax abatement, there has to be two designations for this particular territory that Ruger is going to explain where it is. We have to, first of all, create a economic revitalization area district. In that same district must also be determined to be an economic development target area. The standards are the same for both, whether you create one or the other, or both are the same standards. Those standards were set out in the resolution, the declaratory resolution you're going to be asked to consider tonight. The connection with having it determined to be an economic development target area, the city's economic development commission has to give a recommendation to you that that's an appropriate designation for this area. They met last night and heard a presentation from the developers, asked questions, got reports, and they did in fact adopt a resolution recommending to the council that you proceed with having this declared as an economic revitalization area and as an economic development target area. Now, having said all that, one of the standards that you ultimately have to find, and the Economic Development Commission has already found this, that this is an area that has not been developed. And it's not because of lack of development in the area or obsolescence. It's not capable of being developed under normal circumstances, and that some incentive is necessary in order to achieve appropriate development of this territory. The Economic Development Commission found that is the case with this property. It's been vacant for years. And there's been no development on this bigger piece of property since prior to 1900. So having said that, I think Mr. Ruger has, Mr. Kirstein's has a presentation.
Ruger Kirstein's here on behalf of the entity submitting the SB1 for the consideration of the tax abatement, Poplar Ridge QOZB LLC. For anybody that doesn't know me, here local, I have developed a lot of local projects in the community and throughout the county. So I'm not a new face to the area. I live here and work here and everything else. So and I've got Scott Steinkamp, and he is from Huntingburg, born and raised. So we're working on this project together. We could put our heads together and came up with this great project here that you see on the phone boards. Calling the project Poplar Ridge Apartments. It's a mix of traditional style apartments, and then it's got townhomes here, which would be on the south end of the track at the corner of 19th and 231. For reference, it's where the new sign that was put in there on the corner, all the way north up to the wood line there on top of the hill. Lincoln Drive is the existing street that's up there right now. So what this community is going to consist of is 24 one-bedroom apartments, 48 two-bed, 24 three-bed, 18 two-bed townhomes, 12 three-bed, two-bath townhomes with garages. So we've got a nice variety mix of different types of units. With all that to be said, to Phil's point, developing properties and communities like this, and communities like Huntingburg and others such in the same size, it makes it impossible for typical construction with modern amenities and fixtures, and providing a good quality product to the residents of Huntingburg at rates that they can afford to pay. So this is a market rate apartment community. It's there's no income-based restrictions or anything like that. I want to make that very clear and upfront. This is a market rate development, and we're targeting an average rental rate of $995. So sub 1,000 on brand new apartments with considerable square footage. I believe that's pretty incredible to be able to still do that in today's world, with rising construction costs and interest rates being as high as they are as well. So we're very proud to be able to offer a product like this at those rates. And that's why we are here seeking the tax abatement, the 5-year tax abatement on this project in order to get this done with those rental rates that is required. And also a second piece to that is there's a program out there, Ready To. I'm not sure how familiar the council is with the program that was administered by the state, but our region, ROI, was awarded 30 million. Of that, a portion was dedicated towards housing projects. And we submitted this project over the summer to ROI. And it advanced past multiple levels of consideration to where now is at the final level of consideration. Have not heard back, but that grant is not possible without a local contribution and a one-to-one match from a local entity to the private developer in the project. So the great thing about the tool of utilizing a tax abatement is it's not requiring any funds out of pocket on behalf of the city. But it does count as the contribution towards the grant match. So it's really the perfect tool to pair together on development like this. And with both of those all together, then a project like this comes about. So I'll stop there and answer any questions that the council has. I just wanted to give a brief background of who we are, why we're here, what the project is.
Do you have like a proposed fee schedule as to what your, like what the unit or what the rates will be for each unit? Because a lot of people have come to me like that we are in need of 3-bedroom housing and affordable housing.
Yeah.
Or I didn't realize that this is market rate, not affordable housing, but I'm just curious as to what those units.
The
would
market rate is pretty much in the definition of affordable housing, and not even a one saying.
Well, I don't think necessarily, because it's not like a tax credit or a HUD deal, or anything, so it's like a
Correct.
market rate unit, it's
Yeah,
not, it's
market
income based.
Yeah.
So I think that,
It's affordable for those that need apartments. So it's. It matches the housing study that was for the county, 2023. Of what the needs were based upon the income, of those that were looking for rental properties.
To answer your question directly, we don't have the final numbers committed yet on what those 3-bedroom units would be. But based on a similar product that we delivered in another community like this, those were in the 1,100 to 1,150 range.
oh, for like a 3-bedroom, a
Correct.
3-bedroom would be,
3-bed, 2-bed.
Yeah, we're showing right now the needs for over the next 7 years for apartments in the $500 to $1,500 range at about 189. And when you look at the next 12 years, that's 7 years, 12 years, it's like 300 units. This fits right in with that affordability range that's been determined. I worked a little bit on the housing study, not as much as I did the first one, but I feel very safe with those numbers and what we saw. A lot of time was put into it, interviewing individuals, but also employees that are employed here locally, worked with the not-for-profits here locally, such as TriCap and AWAP and a few others, of looking at new immigrants that are coming in. What are they looking for? And that's really as well as developers. And this is just an update of a previous housing study that's held true from the beginning. We do need some of those to Pam's point, under the $500 range too. There is a need for those, but I think that number's around 70 or so that we still need.
I think to hit on that point too, it's same adage as a new housing development where if there hasn't been, new homes delivered in a community for several years, there's a lot of people living in, houses that are priced in a range that a lot of other people could afford, but there's no place for that person to move to open up that house. And in other communities that we've had existing apartments in and then built new, our residents that, they said, man, I wish I had a new apartment to step up into. This is that opportunity where it's going to capture some of the existing residents here in the community and then open up some of the lower priced apartments for the folks that would choose to live in those. So
I think the main thing that people have said is 3-bedroom apartments, at least 3-bedroom, because there's a lot of blended families. And so that at least the girls have a room, the boys have a room.
Yeah.
And so when like I guess I'm going deeper than what this
No,
is meant for, but
I'll
like
answer as much as I can.
the 3-bedroom units, would that be in phase? Like what phase is that in?
Yeah.
Are these mixed unit or mixed buildings? where
Yeah.
They have
So each
a little bit of
building,
everything?
yeah, each building has the large, I'll just say the large buildings. Because that's where we're going to start. There's 6 1-bedrooms, 6 3-bedrooms, and 12 2s per building. So right away, we'll have 12. And the
That's
first,
it's on the far left.
correct,
yeah,
these, or you can, yeah.
I would bet
So
you
these
the
buildings
three
here-
bed- 3 bedrooms are gonna be the first ones rented. That's usually what happens, so.
So we were very happy. We developed this building design to accommodate a unit mix. And again, it was received well in the community that we just completed. The lease up was fantastic and the feedback from the residents was great. So
This is same as the development in Washington.
Yep. Yep.
I've been to those. It's been received real well up in Washington too. Mayor speaks highly of it.
What's our next move, Phil? We need a motion.
Yeah, so it's kind of a long process. Tonight, you're going to be asked to do two things. One, to adopt the declaratory resolution, just declaring that it's your intent to go forward with declaring this area as an economic revitalization area and as an economic development target area that would qualify this project for tax abatement. The final designation cannot be made until after a public hearing. And after that public hearing, you'll have the opportunity to then, if you so choose, to confirm that designation by what's known as confirmatory resolution. That would take place sometime in January or later, whatever your schedule, whatever you choose to do. The other thing you'd be asked to do tonight is to introduce an ordinance, not adopted, but introduce an ordinance that would also designate this area preliminarily as a economic development target area. And that kind of designation is necessary in order to get residential tax abatement. Typically, tax abatement is only available for industrial, commercial type of projects. But residential can be if it's an economic development target area. In this property, these resolutions find that this property meets all the tests of both an economic revitalization area and an economic development target area. The finding is that it's becoming undesirable or impossible for normal development and occupancy because of lack of development, cessation of growth, deterioration of improvements or character or occupancy or age or obsolescence or substandard buildings or other factors which have impaired values or prevented normal development. So that's there's a bunch of phrases in there that would not all of them obviously describe this property, but many of them do, and so it would qualify if you make that finding.
The property was platted in 1900 for development. That gives you any indication of 124 years after it was platted, still has not been developed. As part of the determining factor here, as well as the undesirability really of the terrain for development, the need to have incentives to develop that site properly to meet the RUDO standards and also the parent standards. That's kind of our gateway to Honeyburg here.
So you have in your board pack was included a declaratory resolution of the Common Council establishing the Poplar Ridge Economic Revitalization Area and Economic Development Target Area. Again, it's just a declaratory, it's preliminary. And attached to that are various exhibits, as you will see, that describe the project. It describes the project, it has a map of the area and the parcel numbers. It has what's known as the SB1, the statement of benefits for each of the three phases. I think maybe Ruger could describe the phases that are intended.
Yep.
It then also has the planning staff, the city's planning staff report recommending that you proceed with this. So this is just a resolution, and if you choose to adopt it, you may do so by motion and second vote.
Is approving the resolution is approving it tonight necessary for any reason that, like, as far as continuing your application or?
yes, well, Phil, you can't set directly.
Well, they are on kind of a time crunch in order to take advantage of this regional opportunity initiative grant. Is it a grant, considered a grant?
Yes.
And so they're kind of on a time crunch to have that. In order to qualify for that grant, the developer has to not only have their own investment in the project, but they also have to show that there's community investment. And community investment, tax abatement would satisfy the community investment. But you also need to satisfy yourselves that what is being done here is what is needed for the community, is the appropriate development for this property. And it's something that's desirable. Because you are going to give up tax on this, it's going to be added to the tax base, but we're going to be giving up property taxes for the first 5 years after each of these phases are completed. But the improvements obviously will remain on the tax base after that, so there will be tax revenue after the 5 years.
But eventually it'll pay more taxes than it does now.
Pardon me?
Eventually we'll pay more taxes than it does now.
Probably, and not only that, but I think that, the report that they, provided you also has an economic impact that shows that increased residents in the city will increase our share of local income taxes. And so it does have a significant, impact, economic impact on the community, not only providing residences, but job opportunities and income tax.
There's a direct and indirect, reason, calculations in there, but just from a property tax standpoint. Over the next really 15 years, I think the numbers show somewhere, if you look at page 17, you can see that they're almost double. 17 will show, the capture of future funds there. That one there, that yellow on the page, and at that 1.7,761,000 is essentially what we can see to capture between now and that 2028, 48 time period, versus what we're capturing. Would be about half of that is what we can capture during that same period on a vacant piece of property. So time, that is the difference. I don't think there is a deadline, of getting things done. I don't think that we should make decisions based upon that deadline tonight with this. I think too that, I think that this should fall on its own merit. Ready funds are going to be very important. The decisions you make tonight will determine probably whether the ready funding to be able to go forward with this. And I've been in conversations with our regional opportunity initiatives and other people regarding this and other projects. There are other housing projects they're looking at. This is a finalist. A lot of them are kicked to the side. 2 reasons it was a finalist. People in Huntingburg, Indiana get things done, and they want to make sure that this project is completed and because half of the projects that were funded last round have never broken ground. Developers have gone bankrupt. The developer here is a previous recipient of some of those funds. That project's almost completed in Jasper.
It's done rented.
Now.
Yeah.
It's at 100% rental, I guess, occupancy.
Yeah.
And some haven't even broken ground yet. So that's another reason that they're a finalist. And also the fact that the city has been, city support will be really that's one thing I will set this aside from the development. The money will go somewhere, they'll develop somewhere, it's just where they're gonna develop here or in another town. They say that these developments, city doesn't do a whole lot that makes funds. But if anything it does, it increases our population, increases our wealth in our community and the value of our community, so. That,
When is your estimated completion date for the phase 1?
For phase 1, estimated completion would be depending on when we can get started. If everything would go smoothly through the meetings that we have planned now, we would plan to be leasing in June of 2026.
breaking ground in March of this year or?
Yeah.
Spring of this year.
So when do you think that, when do you want the abatement to start? I mean, does that start 24? I mean, start. Was that after the first
Completed.
build or
When the first phase is completed,
that's when the 5 years start?
Each phase, when each phase is completed, the abatement starts for the first tax year completion. So there'll be, depending on if there's 3 phases, there'll be 3 different start dates.
Okay.
But they'll be limited to 5 years for each phase.
If you look at the premier properties, demonstration, it'll show you because taxes are paid in rear, page 17, will show you the breakout of when those abatements will be in effect. I cleared the arrows that's in, it's the areas that are in yellow on page 17. You'll see page 1, phases 1, 2, and 3, how those will be phased in. So actually, we're looking at it 2035 in a phase. One thing I noticed, and I did notice this afternoon, we're also showing those the taxes paid at a flat rate in today's dollar.
Yeah.
There will be probably some inflation.
No.
They won't be at that amount every year.
That doesn't take into account The rise in the value, the market value of those, and the amount of taxes that we collect are probably gonna be substantially higher than that. This is really pretty modest, estimates that I see there.
Okay. And I think another note that I don't want to overlook, and we hit on it a little bit, and that's the direct and indirect local tax revenues that you'll see on page 22, that bottom line. You know, that's saying that the bold numbers in the bottom, if this project does not happen, then that's what will not be added to the local tax revenues in Huntingburg. You get what I'm saying? Okay. I know that's kind of we focus on property tax, you know, values, but one that a lot of people overlook and miss is the total local tax revenues that come from having that many new residents, that many new people working and living and buying things in the community. It all adds up to a pretty large number at the end of the day. So.
We need a motion to accept this resolution.
We'll ask a few more questions.
Okay.
Sorry. Didn't we, I feel, you have to refresh my memory, I think it was in 2018-19. We were looking at another project, and didn't we make entire 231 corridor, like a block on each side, into an economic revitalization area?
We made it into an economic development area, and the purpose of that was possibly to make it a TIF area now and to do TIF allocations, but that's never gone forward. There were some possible funds that might have been available for that back. And that has nothing to do with this abatement.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, do you expect that the tax abatement would be all of what you're expecting, or your hope is that the city will contribute to this project? Is that the extent of it?
We have to have that for the ready funds.
Correct.
And the two work together.
But on the city's behalf, the abatement is what we're requesting,
Yeah.
along with approvals that'll be coming in future meetings on just the site itself and the drainage as we alluded to, but as a monetary portion contributed, that's what we're asking.
My questions are kind of, I don't remember seeing this in my board pack until this afternoon. So I haven't had a lot of information or any information until today.
Yeah.
And so this is all kind of new
Sure.
to us.
Yeah.
But, so we're approving you getting approval for the Regional Opportunity Initiative is dependent on us approving the two ordinances that are in front of us tonight, right?
Yeah.
But I would just leave that, as Mayor alluded to, I would leave that aside. Yes, this does play into that heavily, but looking at the abatement itself and the project for the betterment of Huntingburg, I would focus on that piece there. Because without it, then really there is no project, in short. So
any vote tonight is saying that this is an area that should not only needs to be, or has been difficult to develop. And that's the first resolution with the ERA. Target area is one that you're really saying that this area needs to be the area to concentrate on for development. So you're not approving any abatement tonight. You're not really approving the development tonight. Either one at this point. You're just saying, okay, there's a strip of land that's been very difficult to develop over the last 124 years since it was first platted, and we should be able to provide tools in order to make that happen. And so that then becomes it. And Phil can correct me if I'm wrong. That is really the purpose of the economic development. Saying we're going to make tools available to develop the area after that. Now we recognize that it's hard to develop. Now we're going to put some tools available there, but you're not going to really improve those tools.
You're not proving, this is just a preliminary, essentially you're saying, go forward with the project, proceed with it,
And we'll
we'll consider final adoption at a later point after a public hearing.
We've got to consider engineering. We're going to consider whether we do abatements, and those will all be public hearing. Will be involved around that, except for not the engineering. Those will be report that we do. We'll file separately as a staff report, based upon engineering feedback that we get.
Saying that Pam said about affordable housing is very true. So this is a very hard definition to fill. What is affordable housing? The point that Ruger made earlier can be underestimated, that you have people moving out of $500 and $600 apartments, moving to $1,000 apartments. That's gonna open up probably a third of our current units into those price ranges.
At any time, there's at least 40 units that shouldn't be inhabited in the city, that we have no place for them to go to, so it gives us an opportunity to move into those units that probably shouldn't need to go by the
I
wayside.
still think in 5 years when this is done for us, we're still underhoused in the town.
Yeah.
Sure.
We can't grow unless we get housing, and that's all types, but it's a start. There's not been a private project market rate in the city since I can't remember, besides duplexes. And that's a different animal there.
This will be the nicest apartments in Huntington. As far as about that number, you might have one or two here and there, but.
You guys ever have any kind of figures on, like on previous projects in our community or others? What percentage of, like, when you achieve full occupancy on a project like this, what percentage of those are sort of a reshuffling of existing residents versus new residents that come to the community because of those units or jobs in the area and they're looking for a place to stay? Would it be 50-50, 60-40?
No. Not quite that high. We, cause we, pretty much where we develop new is where we've got existing properties in, so we've got a lot of data on that, and there's no, real trend that we can follow on, like an exact percentage. But in a property like this, you could, it all just depends on the current circumstances, but and let's say in Jasper, where we just completed the one that Neil alluded to, yes, just from our own communities alone, we maybe had 5 or 6 people step into what was a 64 unit development. But then we had others where there was less and others that there was more. It all depends at that time. So I don't have a direct answer for you on that one. It's a very round answer, but it does happen, but not quite to the not quite to a 50-50 level. That would be very shocking to me if that was the case.
I can't tell you when we say the same thing. Even though we're full, we still get constant phone calls.
Right now. It's estimated right now, based on our trends right now, that next 12 years, Huntingburg can grow by, I think it's about 743 people, if we had the housing available for it. If not, we won't grow, so. To that point, it's that's the number.
Well, just for me personally, I love the idea that first you guys are interested in developing a project like this. Both of you have been friends to Huntingburg for a long time. And I certainly don't want to stand in the way of the first phase of your application not being approved because we couldn't get around to getting something like this done. I try to ask a lot of questions, because as soon as it's the paper, people are going to be asking us a lot of questions.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Helpful
No, absolutely.
for us to say that we've asked questions and we
The vocal minority will come after you. I gotta get it.
Yeah,
Well,
but I, it's fantastic, I think, for Huntingburg that there's an interest in developing a project like this. So we just have to take it a step at a time.
Oh, yeah.
And I guess you guys will be back at future meetings.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
us posted.
Engineering project, final engineering stuff.
And we, I think we started meeting actually back in January.
Yeah.
And even prior to me becoming mayor, even, I've been talking about this project and radio interviews and other interviews for a long time. Now we've got to this point. I mean, I think it's maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago for these financials that you see on page 17, and moving forward from they make those available to us. They did have those available to us. I ended up getting them last week, I guess here, but it took a while to put it together. And I apologize for the poor fact. Assumed told you today was in there and found out it wasn't. I assumed it was, so I apologize for that. numbers are here. Frankly, the first 6 pages is marketing this project to you. I think when we get down to real numbers, you're looking at these 5-6 pages near the end of the total impact. It becomes a little bit easier decision to make when you look at the economic impact of city of Huntingburg. But not only that, the fact that we can have at our gateway a development that we're proud of that can show off the city. It's a lot better entrance than we have anything to the south side. I can tell you that. I live on the south side.
One thing, I think Huntingburg tends to undersell itself, because I remember when the new housing Stellaway went in, that only thing I heard was negativity, oh, it won't go, blah, blah, blah. Look at it go. I remember when we did Chestnut Gardens. People won't pay $1,300 or $1,400 for rent. Okay. Over 55, and they did. Assisted living. Oh, they'll go to Jackson, those full. So I think we tend to underestimate ourselves. I think that we're holding ourselves back sometimes. Not necessarily you guys, but I think over the decades, not believing ourselves enough. I think you just gotta build it, they will come sometimes, you know.
I enjoy watching the older people move into Chestnut Garden and the younger people go into their old homes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there'll be need for that, more of those in future years.
I can give you several cases on that and occurred. So.
Yeah.
It's been fun over the last few years watching your Chestnut Street
Yeah.
project fill up.
Yeah.
And reach maximum occupancy, and then I heard those same stories about Stellar or Hunter's Crossing. They'll never fill, and now they're 5 properties away from being completely full.
That's
They're
cool.
building their last ones, and so I agree with what you say, Scott, and I
Yeah.
appreciate you mentioning that. I think there's. I have faith that you guys wouldn't be putting a project
Oh,
proposal.
no, we put a lot of money into it, a lot of signatures, you know, the banks, you know.
You've clearly done, you've got the data to know that these are not gonna sit empty for the next 10
No.
years waiting for people to move in. So there is a need, and we'll watch it the same way over the next few years. We'll watch them fill up, just like we have the last project.
And one of the best things in Chestnut Gardens, and I look at this in the same way, is how many times did we drive through that thing, how ugly that old place looked, that piece of property. And now look how it looks. And I think that piece of property in the north end will be the same feeling as you drive by. And it looks as an asset to the community and not a blank hill.
As Neil said, that's our gateway community coming in. It's gonna look nice. Be a big improvement over what we had.
Absolutely. You're getting more people opportunities, choices to move around town.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we can continue on with this and possibly and continue on with those, you know, behind the hospital or whatever. It's a good feeling. It's a
Yeah.
good.
Don't overlook the pickleball courts either.
I know, I was laughing about that. I was gonna ask you, that was really real.
Yeah. No, that's pickleball court. 2 pickleball courts right here. Popular demand.
Yeah.
Popular demand from residents, we decided we had enough space to fit it in there, so.
You gotta put a guard on so people from the property don't come in.
Yeah.
So we still need
Motion to accept the resolution.
declaratory resolution 2024-25, is that correct?
2024-25.
I'll make that motion to adopt resolution 2024-25.
Second it. We got first and second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. As of the first, now we have to consider ordinance was 20.
Should be ordinance number 2426, correct, John?
Right.
And then tonight you can only introduce it. It's an ordinance that would designate upon final adoption, this territory as being an economic development target area as recommended by the Neighborhood Economic Development Commission last night. And again, this designation is necessary so that the developers can receive residential tax base for residential improvements. It is an ordinance that makes the finding that it is a property that is not capable of normal development due to its sitting vacant for a number of years. That it doesn't exceed 15% of the total territory of the city. That at least 20% of the units will be available to low or moderate income individuals. So that doesn't mean subsidized rent. It just means that they're going to be priced such that moderate income people can afford them, single bedrooms, double bedrooms. Probably would fit very nicely into that category.
Good.
And then 20% of those, in the total development. So then, so this ordinance we introduced tonight, and also after it's introduced, we would set a hearing date, public hearing date for the council to conduct a public hearing on both the confirmatory resolution that was necessary to confirm the economic development area, and also on this ordinance to designate this as an economic development target.
Need a motion to introduce 2024-26.
Make a motion to introduce 24-26.
And we have a second. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carries, so do we need to set a meeting?
We do need to set a hearing date, I'm not sure, our first January meeting or your second January meeting. We do have to have at least a 10-day publication.
I think our schedule originally, what was supposed to occur was going to be a second meeting. So that's sound correct, Tom? Or we-
First one is the 7th.
No,
First
it's
one
the 14th. The 14th and 28th are the two council meetings.
14th, 28th, December, 14th, 28th.
Yeah, the holidays and we'd probably be better at 28, Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we get that 10-day period that doesn't include holidays and holidays, so
So that's not gonna affect their proposals.
I think we can do the 28th as a date originally.
Jason,
Of January,
Yeah,
correct.
very date that also gives a lot of time for public discussion after the first of the year and the holidays when people are really making considerations of it. My suggestion, you can pick any date you want, obviously, but my suggestion is the later date just because it gives more time for discussion over the project.
make a motion, make a public hearing on January 28th for this project.
All those,
I'll second.
got a first and a second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. So we have the date set at January 28th for
Yeah, 5:30.
at 5:30 here.
Yeah.
Give you 3 copies of the resolution. It's all you need to sign this, sign it, and then also approve it.
Bill, would you like me to sign the SB1 forms now? Because the ones that were submitted,
Who has the SB1 form? There's copies attached to the ordinance.
I've got 3.
The resolution.
I've got 3 copies here.
Yeah, you can, if you wouldn't mind signing them. And, you want those, Paul, or should Tom hold on to that?
Oh, I'll get them. Okay. I'll get scans of them. That road right there, is that just a drawing of it? Is that the existing one that's out there now?
Road, that's probably Lincoln Drive.
This one? Yeah.
Yeah, it don't look like that right now, though.
Okay.
It'll look much better after this project's
I mean, is that for us to do, or is that your
No,
property? That's your property?
we own it now. So whenever this project's done, we're going to have it comply with current standards. And then after that, if it's accepted, then turn it.
Lincoln Drive was never accepted as a city street. So now they've been bringing up the standards. We're also, it's been reviewed by, been reviewed by our police or fire department, making sure we get flux and those type of things in there. I think our chief made some recommendations on the radius of some of the turns into to the area, try to change those in there. So I think one of them hasn't changed in that picture, but possibly could be. Right now, we can't get school buses turned around on Lincoln or anything. So this will be improvement to that street. Be the widest street in the city.
They're wide.
It'll be it'll be a little wider than First Street. That'd be great. Is east of Main. Which is right now, I think, the widest street. I think we're going to the 14th, so. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for being
Okay.
here.
Thank you.
Thank you all
Thank you
very
guys
much.
for your time.
There you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You
True.
keep it
We'll take your vision.
Oh, you don't want them?
We can keep them. That's what-
Yeah, leave them.
Thank you. I would have got to my truck. and-
You would remember.
So if you wanna leave, you can leave them, but otherwise that's.
Yeah.
I bet Glenn will brought them tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
That's what it says. He keeps back saying people move out of his houses. I guess it has this one holds up as you said, or. Yeah. That's good, but also about it's the next side. So that's just never got it.
Bill, against, one of us missing the third page.
Yeah, I wish there was more of
The
a
signature.
signature.
Okay. Is it, which one is it, a resolution, declaratory resolution?
That's.
Or is it-
resolution. It would be 24.
I think I've got.
I just think that might, the last page.
Talk about questions, well, they just might see. Like this part of it, and then
Back in the actually one thing.
You're missing this.
Well, financially, which. That was. Yes.
They looked at both. We brought in superintendent support, so it was Donnie. Next on agenda is clerk treasurer Thomas Stiffy. We have nothing. Any other items here from council?
I would like to ask about, Phil, you had sent out a draft ordinance. Amending chapters 150 and 34 of the Huntingburg Code of Municipal Ordinances relating to hoarding. This was so sorry, it was emailed from Phil about a week ago, I believe. So I had a chance to review it. And I don't really have any, particularly any issues with any of the topics that you've addressed in here. I would assume that this is maybe kind of started out as standard wording, maybe copied from other towns that.
Well, I've not found any really extensive ordinances that deal with hoarding. Janet Schnell, Mrs. Schnell gave me a website from the State Board of Health. That website was not very helpful because that website just said we can't control hoarding. You can contact the state fire marshal's office or your local communities can regulate it. Hoarding is not an easy thing to regulate. First of all, in many cases, what we consider hoarding could very well be a mental illness. The other thing that makes it difficult is that deals with property rights. And so government has to have a compelling interest in order to restrict people's rights to own and control property. So what we consider hoarding is usually excessive clutter of personal property laying around in people's yards and properties and in their houses and on their improvements. And if we're going to prohibit that type of conduct, it has to somehow be tied to the public safety and welfare. So that's what this ordinance attempts to do. is to tie the excessive collection of clutter and intangible personal property to concerns for public safety and welfare. It's still not gonna be easy to enforce. It's gonna be very subjective judgments as to whether or not this accumulation or that accumulation is really affecting the public welfare. But this is at least a tool that we can use to begin addressing some of these issues when they surface.
So it's not really addressing our desire for property to look a certain way. As much as that clutter may be causing a health risk or have a risk to the neighborhood outside of just there, I mean, I like figurines in yards, those type of things. And how far do you control that or how far you can? I think statute's very clear that, no, that isn't what this hoarding thing is about. It's more that that's a harborage or some health risks that may be a threat to. That's really a portion, a lot of it. It's hard to prove property value decreases without somebody coming in and actually appraising properties with and without junk, how do you make that final determination? That's why it's difficult. That's one reason.
Even then, if it is a condition which affects the value of your property, that's more a civil problem between two property owners, and it could rise to the level of the person collecting the clutter causing a civil nuisance, and so their adjoining landowner, or the person who's affected, can bring suit in a civil area to enjoin that nuisance. What municipal government can do is address it from a public health and safety and welfare standpoint, if it in fact does adversely affect public health, safety, or welfare.
We've all watched a show on TV that kind of addresses this issue. We've all seen properties be actually condemned by local governments because of the safety that it would, or the danger that it would pose if there were a fire to our own firemen, and their possibly inability to save someone, or that for them to be trapped in that building. But you had addressed that with me, that we're in Indiana. Those shows are filmed in other states. Did you talk about that?
Well, no, well, actually, this ordinance would address that. I mean, if the clutter in fact does represent or present a threat to the safety of emergency response personnel, then it's something that would violate this ordinance, and we could use the ordinance to have it abated. But there has to be a finding, and it has to be supported by the facts that this presents a true public health or risk to emergency response people, or to the public health or public welfare, or public safety. And every situation is going to be a little bit different. They're going to be very fact sensitive.
And whether you mentioned public health, and I was thinking a lot of these places could house critters,
Yeah.
rats, or anything like that, and that's what bothers me. Years ago when we talked about this, it's like, I want to sit there and own a piece of property, and they move in next door after I do, and they either stack their cars up, they do whatever, we or do the hoarding thing. Well, that is, even though the value that the bank gives on what that house is worth, it doesn't mean that you're gonna give that if you want to buy my property, because that's where you're at, and that affects me, that affects the homeowner. And I see Janet's case, if they want to sell that house, the bank will say that house is worth X amount of dollars, and then, but who would want to come buy that because the neighbor's property is cluttered up or full, or, and we have to start somewhere. And I think, looking at this, even at the penalties, you got $50 for the first time. When does the second one come in effect? You give them so many days. I think maybe Paul can explain, but
the way it's, and this is just the first step. The way it's addressed is that if it's determined that a property owner or occupant is violating the ordinance, they're given a notice to abate the violation within 30 days, or whatever number of days is appropriate. If they don't, then they're issued a ticket. That's an actual fine, $50 fine. Each day thereafter that it continues past that 30 days is a separate offense. And each day $100 gets added on to it. Now there's a limit. I think we can't go beyond $7,500 fines, civil fines.
Okay.
But before it got to that point, if the property owner was in fact in violation of the ordinance, we issued the notice, we issued the citation, we issued the fines, they were not cooperating. We would bring an action to, for an injunctive relief, courts to get a court order to require them to abate it.
I see. Because I was thinking like the third.
Because fines don't help.
No.
They don't bring in a lot of revenue. It's a tool to help, yeah, people to comply, but
Well, I'm looking at the third, that's $100. I mean, it's cheaper to just pay the fines and not do nothing.
not for $100 every day.
Oh, it's a daily rate?
Every day that it continues past the 30-day notice is a separate violation.
Okay. Because I was thinking it might be cheaper for them just to pay the field versus paying a place to rent, you know what I mean? But I get it.
I feel like this is kind of subjective, like as to what is considered hoarding, so who makes those decisions as to
Yeah.
what? I mean, is it something, I know that there was an instance in the past where the fire department wasn't able to go into a home because of hoarding. So is it where the fire chief is gonna go in and say that this home isn't safe, that we wouldn't send firefighters in, or how are we gonna?
That
worked
would be
both
one
ways.
example. That would
It's
be
worked
one
both
way.
ways. We have had a residence tore down in the city because of
Right.
ill queue back on Washington Street. Phil may remember several years ago. Took us quite a while to get that done with the county health department and everything else, but we finally got it tore down. And it's not long ago, as you just mentioned, that firemen knew from residents not to go in. And the building no longer there, it caught fire. So, and that could happen anywhere, you know, in this world. Firemen are not gonna put their lives in jeopardy if they can't get in and protect themselves. They're not gonna go in. It's a surrounded ground. So it's their call at the time, but hopefully that comes in the pre-plan. Chief.
Well, I would hope that it would be something that's like, okay, this is it. I mean, I don't know. I think it's a fine line between like an invasion of people's privacy or their, you know, but then also too, that if you're for the safety of the firefighters or people that are, you know, don't put their life at risk either. So it's like, where do we draw the line? Do we have people have inspections, or is there something like where it's like any people turn other people in, or how does this work?
Well, if it comes to the attention of the code enforcement department, and Paul could probably answer this, but his policy, his practice generally is to try to work with the property owner or the occupant, point out the violation, give them a chance to try to correct it. Then if after a reasonable attempts, there's no progress being made, that's when the physical notice to actually do within a certain time period is issued. And after that time period, if there's no progress or sufficient progress isn't made, that's when the fines start in daily.
It's primarily the current ordinance we have, and it goes back to the mid-90s, long before I even was here. We're dealing primarily with the exterior of the structure. We don't do anything inside from the code enforcement point of view, because in order to go inside, I have to see the violation from outside. We've had 4 or 5 properties that it has taken 3 or 4 years. 2 of them have made visible signs of project. The one that most are probably thinking about had 3 properties. It's taken 14 months to get one of the properties and all the stuff that was in the outside, in the backyard, covered up with tarps and that cleaned up. Generally, once we notify them that there's an issue, here's what the issue is, we will ask them to contact us, the property owner. And we will work with them if they're making visible signs of progress. And we give them usually every 2 weeks or every 4 weeks, we're gonna meet with them, sit down, look at what progress has been made. In some cases, it doesn't work and we start ticketing them. And that's not worked, which is why we had asked Phil, and the mayor and I have discussed it, is trying to take our old ordinance, modernize it, and get it condensed a little bit so it's a little easier to work with, because our old ordinance has got stuff scattered all over. It still doesn't address the mental side of it. And it still doesn't address what's inside the structure unless police, emergency management, or the fire department come to code enforcement and say, hey, there's an issue. Now with Donnie Heim in the position he's in now, that makes it dramatically easier. The police have been very good about letting us know, alerting us when there's a problem. And there's at least one of those properties that I'll have discussions with somebody after the first year about possibly starting the condemnation process on.
And for those people that really tried, they've been very fair. And I know Chief Hine worked with a family on the south side that a family members came in weekly and filled a dumpster. And that continued for several weeks, filling that out until they got it cleaned out. After the fourth dumpster, I wondered what it was like inside the house. But they continue making progress. The family worked with the person that was inhabiting the home in order to clean it up and bring it back. And some of the people that we have as workers now, I have spoken to their families and relatives. What can we do, or what can you do to affect it from a mental health standpoint of what can we do with your sister or your brother that this is happening. So we've taken a human approach to this too, but we also need to remove. We got to be able, you know, and Phil and I probably look at it and say, whatever decision we make, we need to be able to defend ourselves in a court of law too. You know, but to Pam made an excellent thing is who's making that decision, how's that decision made? The ordinance needs to be clear and spell that out, so we're consistent with the decisions we're making. Because you're right, Pam, it's I don't like what's in my neighbor's yard, but it doesn't break. There's nothing in the ordinance against it.
Well, and I think it makes me feel a little bit if it's on the outside of their house. It's not like we're going into other people's houses, which you would assume then too. If with Donnie being in the position he is with code enforcement, that then could take a step further as the fire chief to potentially maybe just reach out to them and say, hey, if there would be an issue.
When the hoarding is in the inside, there is no choice to be made with the fire department other than stand outside and don't let it spread to the home next to you.
Exactly.
The last time that occurred, they were so exhausted from the heat and the fire that we did have to ask Jasper to come over and assist with firefighters. Just because they realize that our firefighters will sometimes work all day at their regular job and they come and fight fire at night. And by the next morning, they're done, you know, they've been up. And we have had been in no way will the firefighters go into those homes.
May I address the board, please?
What's that?
May I address the board?
Sure. We're gonna give you time here. We have it on there.
Well, you actually came across a couple of areas that I wanted to address. The hoarding policy is not hoarding. Here's Jasper's. And it's actually, I believe that's at the bottom of this page. Then they don't address it as hoarding, they address it as something in safety. This is the information with the highlights for the state of Indiana with the hoarding. And actually HUD has a checklist to identify what hoarding is. And so you can use the HUD recommendations. Jasper also has the 3 people who are instrumental in deciding what is hoarding. So it's a 3-person group that comes in and defines that this is a problem that this can cause. So as you guys are discussing things, there's a lot of protection, it seems like, with the property. That's a problem, but where's my protection? You know, when you talk about, you know, we don't want to send the firefighters into the house, I get that. But then that means that fire can spread to my property. And I know they'll do everything possible to save it, but. And then the other thing is we talk about the mental health aspect, you know, the hoarding is a disease, a mental health disease. But what kind of impact are we putting upon our firefighters when they have to go to a house they can't save? So we have to really look at the impact, not only with the person themselves, but what's happening to our community that is affecting other people. And so I really was coming tonight because I was going to ask about fines. Well, first of all, I was going to ask you where you all were last week, because I was here. I had the wrong week. So I'm back. But I had a question about the fines. Phil, you did help to describe that it's weekly. Now, is the fine based upon each area of focus, as in the vehicles that are filled with debris and whatever that they can't drive? Is that a separate fee fine?
It's really up to the code enforcement officer to determine whether or not there's a separate violation in the vehicle versus separate violation on the front yard or on the porch or inside the house. I think typically, what is done is one violation, it's considered one violation, and if they get cooperation, that's great. If not, then we get a little bit stricter. We start.
If the vehicle's on the street though, we can't touch it. code enforcement can't touch it, it has to be the police department.
Police department can have put away. Just because it's filled with debris, they do drive it that way.
Correct.
And I appreciate, I've looked at Jasper's, it is not a perfect system there either.
Right.
My previous jobs, I would get calls frequently from their fire chief and other people of what they can do. Cause they end up with the same. They end up with the same orders there in the same situations that they have a hard time addressing.
So has Donnie had a chance to look at this to provide feedback or, his thoughts?
I haven't heard back from him.
Yeah, he's looked at it. We haven't, we're having a meeting set up with that, and I talk frequently with Jasper. I know he works with the fire chief closely too on these types of situations, so it's not execution. The ordinance is easy to run. Becomes a too many gray areas a lot of times. I want to fix as you do, our fire department wants it fixed. Hoarding inside's a big concern, with our fire department is a big concern with emergency personnel. Being able to get in, we've had homes that they've not been able to even get down the hallway to get to somebody that's fallen. And get them out of it. We've had all those, so.
Even gain access to a door to bring someone out for
Getting access
emergency
to a
treatment.
bedroom. Person's not left the bedroom.
That's all addressed in this draft
So-
ordinance. Any of these situations we're talking about that would affect public health, safety, or emergency response people is all addressed in here. What it's not going to do, and what many people are upset with, is my neighbor's got 13 plastic flamingos and 17 bird baths and all kind of yard ornaments, and it's detracting from the value of my property, and probably is. But we can't regulate people's aesthetic values. We can regulate if it affects the public health, welfare, and safety, and that's what this ordinance is intended.
And that's, right. And that's why it's changed to, instead of hoarding, it's identified as public safety, to address it that way instead of, like you said, what would be pretty for one, not pretty for another.
Yeah, so,
Not making value statements here, it's actually health concerns, health and safety concerns.
there seems to be I've had several conversations with various people about, in the interest of safety of a renter in town, that we right now don't have the ability to inspect rental properties. If we did, at some point in the future, have an ordinance that would give us the ability to do that. And let's say one person owns 3 properties or 4 properties in town. Phil, to your experience, is it possible to have 3 residences, or would one be a residence and the other ones be subject to like a rental ordinance that would allow inspection?
I'm not sure what you're saying.
So, all right, I'll
They're all
rephrase.
three apartments are all 3 residences.
So you're allowed to have one state that you live in, right? I can't be a resident of Indiana and Florida at the
Okay,
same time.
okay.
So within Huntingburg, if I owned 3 properties, I wasn't renting them to anybody, but I owned 3. And we had a rental ordinance or an ordinance that allowed us to inspect rental properties on a regular basis, say once a year, once every 3 years or something. For things like fire safety for their tenants, right? Smoke detectors and clear pathways and no padlocks on doors, those types of things. If I own 3 properties in Huntingburg but I wasn't renting any of them out, can I count all 3 as my residence? Or is only one of my residents, and would the other 2 be?
Those inspection ordinances would only address properties that are either rented or being offered for rent. If they're not being offered for rent or they're not rented, then they're not considered rental properties. They may have other violations. They may have unsafe building violations. We have an unsafe building ordinance. We have property maintenance ordinances. They may violate other ordinances. But if they're not rental properties, then we couldn't go in and inspect them under the guise of a rental inspection ordinance.
And a lot of times they don't consider those homes, I consider those storage buildings. And as a result of that, and if they're in the business of selling those, it's my contention that they could be considered maybe citizens' business properties, but that's not the way that they're set up in the state of Indiana. to do so. We can all have our opinion on that, but I know where you're going with this.
Yeah.
And, because we do have people that have, we do have more than one hoarder that has multiple. I know of at least a couple in the city that have multiple buildings and residences that they store stuff in every one.
And so if you get a violation, they end up taking the stuff at this one property to the other properties. So all they're doing is they are consistently shifting the hoarding problems to a different property. It's not really solving the problem.
Well, I see it boiling down to two things, Janet. One, we have to have the teeth in the ordinances and the laws to stir it up, right? But secondly, it really needs to be the will amongst the council and city employees and the community to stop it, to put an end to it, to make it uncomfortable for people to do this, right?
I think,
And so it's gonna be a combination of that, but I think the first step is for us to pass an ordinance that everybody can agree on, that's gonna give us the teeth first. Then we have to decide how aggressively we enforce that, how far we wanna push it to get compliance, you know? And just the fact that we have one might gain some compliance with some people, just, you know, without even having to stir the pot. But some might dig their heels in, and then we have to have the will.
I think Phil took a huge step forward with this proposal.
I do too. I like it too. It's
I
written.
will tell you that Chief Hine, Paul Lake and myself are very excited that this is there. I think, maybe, I don't know, if we've had discussions, but the rental inspection, there are three things that are laid out to Phil and to Paul Lake and Donnie Hine that I want to make sure that we get in place by next year. One of those is more hoarding in their rental inspections. Are some limitations on rental properties. They're probably 60–70% of rental properties are exempt from inspections based upon the state statutes and allowed to, but it's that probably half of that, the remaining 30% are the ones we're really worried about. If you think about it, it's not the people that we're presenting tonight. It's others. So those were two of the biggest things really right now. Third thing is what, Paul? Condemnation of vacant properties that have been sitting. And I'll just say here,
There are at least 4 or 5.
yeah, we have at least a couple between 6th and 12th Street on 231. And we need to continue making that a priority and getting rid of those. And whatever ordinances or teeth we need to do to make sure we get them out of there. Make it comfortable for them to keep ownership of other buildings. We need to, because it is detrimental to our growth. It is detrimental to our.
It's not a quick process. Condemnation, generally it's gonna take a while, but you dot all your i's, cross your t's, you'll end up being successful with it.
We have 10 properties that we're looking at moving on. 10, I guess we're at right now.
Yeah.
Next year for condemnation. Those would be nice properties to build new homes. But we're looking at maybe 18-month process.
Yeah.
It's following statutes. You gotta understand that the most powerful lobby at our state legislators are realtors and people of the property that rent property. And they've made it very difficult for us to institute a lot of condemnation things. I've been to the state house, I've testified before the committees, and I've got an 80% vote, and it goes to another committee, they will bring it up because of the power of the lobbyists that are there. So that's it. You know, and I'm not about to give up with it. And frequent calls to the Attorney General's office on things that did regarding housing and what we can do there. So it'll be first year in as mayor, second year will be these concerns that we're really that we mentioned today, and we will have frequent meetings and discussions regarding how we can make it go cleaner and faster. But the dedication of making it happen It's not a lack of, right now it's a lack of teeth. With the present ordinance has been.
I will say, addressing the mental health part, your only responsibility that you all could even possibly do is just hand people a resource sheet to say, here are the mental health services in Du Bois County and around the community. So that they know that they have resources to reach out for mental health help. I do want to thank the board because you guys have been fantastic offering advice to me. I followed up with the advice that was given, so I do thank you and I appreciate the approach. Me being able to approach you and not feel intimidated or feel like I'm not being heard. I really do appreciate that part. So anytime you guys have any questions, I have talked to Donnie about, how can we best facilitate this? What do you need from us? And so we've had that as an open discussion.
Well,
But
we
yeah,
appreciate you, Janet, and really truly do. I thank you for being here and maybe prodding us along a little bit, realizing that we have a lot of priorities in our life and jobs. Sometimes we shove some things to the side for now, and maybe it did get, I think it got shoved aside for too long. We've already made that a major goal for next year, is to strengthen those three things. There's buildings I want to see gone.
mhm.
There's buildings all of us would like to see gone. There are homes that we'd like to see improved, but on the other end too, we need to provide all resources to our residents in order to be able to live and stay here. If there's ways that we're going to be working very hard next year to make sure we have the mental health resources available to our own employees and make that a priority too in the coming years. I'm not adequate to be able to handle all those things, but we know within house, we can do that. And I am on the health department board that kind of puts together the county's health wellness plan. So we've had some discussions around that and got an email while I was here from the health department wanting to assist us through this process, which I forwarded on to Paul Lake. So hopefully the county is wanting, we'll work together through county and otherwise.
And I can send you our referral resource sheet that we've used so that you can also have that on file. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
We have any other items?
Welcome to your-
I do have a question.
Okay, good.
I didn't know if that was the people out there this one. Do we have an ordinance against panhandling? So it's something you guys, there was a recent incident this weekend. Of panhandling in town. I think that there are enough resources within our community between, I know there's maybe a transient fund at the police station or shared abundance. It seems like there's no need for panhandling, but if we,
They do have, the gentleman was given resources. He was asked to leave private property that didn't allow him to do. He was monitored. He didn't approach anybody over a 2-hour period. I even walked by him to see if he approached me. He wouldn't. So we felt a little bit better about it. And I did come back and ask him if he needed help with anything. He showed me a big stack of bills that he collected. He had more money than swallowed than I had. So he felt like he was in good enough shape to make it down Carmel, Illinois. And that's where we left it. He did have a tent set up in one of our parks.
So how hard is it to throw an ordinance like that on the books? Just to give us again the teeth that if we needed to.
I don't know.
Yeah, we have to draft, we have to research a little bit, find out what we can and can't do. In the past, it's been somewhat of a delicate situation because we used to have, I think we talked about this at lunch, we used to have clubs, organizations that would panhandle at stoplights, essentially, and collect money, donations for good causes, but if you have a panhandling ordinance, it has to be enforced uniformly against all people and organizations.
well, could it be that we have an exemption for 501c3s?
Again, if you
Panhandle
look at
or
that,
something, I mean, like for a charitable,
we
I just think that,
can't be discriminatory.
I agree that,
I have to see whether or not that's discriminatory, be considered to be discriminatory, just exempt some organizations, not others. I don't know, I look at it.
Well, they can come in involved with it.
I just think that there's so many, we're really blessed in this community to have so many resources. And I think that coming from Indianapolis, there are panhandlers everywhere, and very few of them are using the money for food or shelter or anything. So I think that if they are in need of food or shelter, we have resources for both of those, but I don't think that panhandling is necessary.
So if we get a musician standing on the street corner playing with his suitcase open, is that considered panhandling?
That's entertainment.
Not sure. He was working for transportation money to make it back to Mount Carmel.
Yeah.
Is where he was at, and there weren't resources for that, you know, I would have referred him to a couple of churches that had some things available, but he asked. The thing about it is that he was at the corner, I went twice to buy fuel without saying anything to me. And none of those, I walked around, was showing up, he never made any attempt to approach me or ask me anything. Police monitored him across the street for quite a while, and never was seen approaching anybody, so kind of let it lie. Other than the fact that they told me he couldn't go in any private property there and approach anybody, or he was not about approaching. So then he and actually his sign was, says I need a right to Mount Carmel. Is what the sign said. People were walking over and giving him money. But he was looking for a right to
He
Mount
was
Carmel.
hitchhiking, essentially hitchhiking.
Yeah, he was essentially hitchhiking.
I don't think it's.
So it was kind of weird. It was kind of a weird situation.
It hasn't been an issue that I know of. I mean, where we have a very isolated incident here recently, but I mean, if that's something you want to address, I can look into.
And we're not sure about the tent, but it seemed unusual that.
It just seemed, and I don't want to be discriminatory towards anyone, but I just think sometimes whenever you open the door just a little bit, that it's like, just because we haven't had that. An instance before in the past that I don't get a ton of phone calls, but I did get a lot of phone calls this weekend about the tent in the park and panhandling, yeah. And so.
At least I paid. Scanners, so the year.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's how I knew to go to the park.
So, and I think that it is kind of like, we are blessed to live in a tight knit, that nice community, and so it's like just, I don't know, just something that I think maybe we should address or, look into addressing. And that's it, now we can.
You making a motion?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
No, just I'm cool with that.
Okay, we're no longer live.
You took over Ed?
Yeah.
You talking as much as him?
Sorry?
You talking as much as him?
I'll try not to.